Here's another of these increasingly Rococo pieces that we've been looking at, this sort of heightened Baroque classicism of an aristocratic couple gazing in an adoring way at each other, the female lying beneath the male. This is from Suffolk. The sculptor is Abraham Story. Again, we're looking at the early part of this period, the Restoration, through to the middle of the 19th century. This piece dates from 1678, and it shows, yet again, the ideals about themselves that the provincial English and British aristocracy had. A monumentalism, a heightened Baroque sensibility, a classicism, and a desire to glorify in family, nationality and self. Yes, here we have another rather classical, not particularly Baroque piece, quite heavy, solemn, a peer of the realm in his sort of imperial ermine. Again, this desire to present oneself as a Victorian gentleman, as a man of leisure, as a man of means, also as a leader, as a statesman, and something of a Roman senator in modernity. Again, this sculpture will be full size and will be there, doubtless on a tomb or mausoleum, to be admired by kith and kin in Oxfordshire. Here we have another slightly ornate piece, again a tomb, two life-size vehicles, aristocratic husband and wife, bewigged in his case, staring into the distance, quite opulent. There's a slightly Baroque touch to it. There's a column that looks vaguely Doric to one side of them, and an arch. Again, it's designed in a provincial setting. This is doubtless in a probably quite small church in Oxfordshire. It's designed to indicate power, local resource, and that one is part of a higher civilization that's solid, stolid, representational, and knows where it's going and what it represents. Right, here we have another piece from Yorkshire, Reverend Thomas Whitaker, possibly a local sort of near the edge Anglican to nonconformist firebrand or evangelical preacher of the time, stares out serenely but with a slightly puritanical face at his would-be Congregationalists. Again, you see, even extended out to probably a member of the gentry who happens to be in the clergy, the same classicising and heroic tendencies, virtual full-size replication of self, continuation of one's bodily existence in stone after death, power and permanence, a civilization that really was encyclopedic and thought that they could define everything, determine everything, knew what was what, and had the future in their hands. Here we have a slightly new type of sculpture, not in its form or delineation, still classical, but you notice that there's a romantic feel coming in. It's quite naturalistic and realist up to a point, given the classicising tendency we've already mentioned. It's also biographical. It's actually of a person, Southey the poet. It also relates to a new movement and a new sensibility in the arts, which will become the dominant tendency of the whole of the 19th century, and this is the Romantic movement. You notice he's not wearing a wig, he stares directly at the sculptor's eye, if you like, and although it's in Westminster Abbey and it dates from the 1840s, Southey, slightly forgotten early Romantic poet now, who wrote a famous biography of the naval hero Nelson, Southey looks out at you and is the dawn of a new sensibility, more representational, less idealised, and in their own minds a return to natural forms. Here we have another heroic and classicising piece of a military figure, but he's also partly dressed in the military uniform of a Roman commander from the ancient world, even though he's got a cannon behind him and a coat of arms above. So you've got this idea of modernity, cannon fire from the middle of the 1700s, and yet at the same time a Roman imperial statesman who in death looks out at the future and the past. Here's an interesting relief, even though the skulls are slightly three-dimensional, from Exeter in the West Country, St Patrick's Church, 1717, by a profound provincial sculptor called Weston. It's of Jonathan and Elizabeth Ivy, And you notice that the background relief, which is above the figures and is sort of transfigured or transubstantiated souls, some of them bewinged like angels, very much relates to artistic work that could be by Donatello or Bellini. And with the skulls you have a Gothic touch, even though this is very much prior to the Romantic movement. You have in this art, deep down, a form of tomb art, really, an obsession with death and with decay, but also with finality. Don't forget, this was a world in which the next life was very close, was believed to be totally real, and the Christian way was to prepare for it. Therefore, the celebration of death in a manner which contemporary people would find very, very difficult to either stomach or understand was ever present. To put your skulls on the side of a tomb to celebrate your life would have been regarded as normalcy for a high bourgeois family in the provinces like this at the beginning of the 18th century. This is a famous piece dating from the middle of the 18th century by Richard Westmacott the Elder. It's in Gloucestershire. At the upper part of this powerful sculpture consists of a guardian angel seen in feminine form, raising the top of the lid of a burial urn and sort of mausoleum. She looks down in a beneficent way upon the corpse, who will now rise to ascension. Half of the same image, we see the object upon which the female guardian angel or spirit looks from above to below. And this is the skeleton of the departed, who's now sort of released from the burial urn and is looking up as a sort of fleshless sort of monster at the angel who's freeing him from death, and he's about to rise in accordance with the high Christian doctrine of the second coming and of the resurrection of the body and the second and final judgment, when according to this particular theology, all will be redeemed or cursed and thrown down into darkness and hell, and those who are not will ascend into heaven and will, in certain circumstances, achieve again their own corporeal nature. So you'll be reborn in life, in death, even with flesh, but the bones survive and are being raised by this angel. There's a strongly Gothic element to this piece, but again you see the obsessionality with death and with the overcoming of death seen in terms of classical sculpture.